Now, from CBS News Miami, this is Facing South Florida with Jim DeFede.
Welcome to Facing South Florida. I'm Jim DeFede. Now, I realize it is early in the legislative session, but there is a markedly different tone in Tallahassee this year. We're not seeing as many of the divisive social issues as we have previously. Again, it's early, so we will need to take a wait-and-see attitude. But this week, I spoke to Democratic State Senator Rosalind Osgood, and she agreed the tone is different this year.
Well, I think we have different leadership. We have Senator Ben Albritton, who is the Senate president, and Danny Perez is the Speaker of the House. And Senator Albritton set a tone right out the gate in his initial message that we can have different perspectives, but that we're going to operate in love in a way that we respect each other. So I feel like it's a climate where people are working, as a part of a team, although they have different perspectives. It's not mean-spirited. It's not a lot of, antagonism going on. The Senate is kind of a cool place. You work in a certain way. It's only 40 of us. And although, we have 28 Democrats, 28 Republicans and 11 Democrats, it's not something that's extremely hostile.
I know that one of the issues that is being taken up again this year deals with condos and the fallout from the legislation that passed a few years ago after the tragedy at Champlain Towers, with the idea of how do a lot of those condominiums handle the issue of having enough in reserves, those reports that they need on the structural integrity, and setting aside money. I've always been a believer that I own a private house. If my roof needs fixing, I have to plan for that and take care of my roof. No, the government doesn't really come often and bail me out. I know there are some programs, but by and large, as a homeowner, it's on me to take care of my property. I know that for a lot of condominium owners, this has hit them hard because suddenly they're getting huge assessments. So how do you balance that and address some of the concerns that condominium owners have that they're being hit too hard, that they're having to come up with too much money in a very short period of time to make necessary repairs?
Yes, Jim, I've heard from a lot of condo owners. I have Sunrise Lakes Phase 4 and 5 in my district that I've met with. They sent 726 letters to the governor expressing their concern about having to come up with so much money so quick. They're a 3-story, 2-story high-rise apartment condo complex, and they just feel that they needed a little more time. We are getting a lot of feedback from residents about the condo reserves and, the money that they have to come up with, the structural the structural survey that they have to do, the structural inspection that they have to do. And what seems to be the problem is once they get the structural inspection, they don't have to do everything tomorrow. I think that's one of the things that I've been trying to explain to people. And then I do believe there is a difference. I actually filed a bill that was suggested to me some ideas from my constituents in Senate District 32. And this bill would give a delineation between high rises that are 6-story and higher and those that are not. And then those condos that are on the coastal area and those that are not. In my district, most of my condos are west. They're not on the coastal area. And they're just asking for an extra, 2 years to come up with the different money for the roof reserves, for the structural reserves. They're very okay with the 10-year inspection. I actually agree with that. I think 40 years to inspect the building is way too long. But you have to balance because we don't want another Surfside. But I think sometimes we react too aggressively when the state is a diverse state. So I think we maybe should have legislation for true high rises that are on coastal areas, and then those that are not on coastal areas, like on the west side of town, we should look to do something different. But I can tell you that the residents are hurting. Another thing that's happening is people are leaving. So when someone leaves and the unit is there, now the remaining people have to pick up the additional cost because there's an empty unit.
Well, and this segues often into discussions about property insurance as well, another area of contention for a lot of your constituents, for people across Florida. It seems to be that the market seems to be stabilizing a bit, but do we expect any major moves out of the legislature, from your colleagues, when it comes to property insurance this year?
No, as a matter of fact, a lot of the talk in Tallahassee is to just let what's in place kind of work itself out. However, there's been a lot of recent news that was prompted by an article that I think the Miami Herald did around these insurance companies that were not being truthful in reporting. And I know that there's talk in Tallahassee about bringing them in and putting them under oath and having them to, kind of defend themselves. Speaker Perez seems to be a guy with a lot of integrity and is not going to tolerate insurance companies misrepresenting, themselves, saying that they were crashing when they were really making profits. So we'll have to see how that play out over the next couple of days.
The governor has also talked about doing away with property taxes. I'm not sure that's. I never know how seriously to take someone when they say something like that, because I think sometimes we lose sight of the fact that in Florida we don't have income tax. There's no state income tax that they have in other states. The way we tend to fund our local governments and our government is through property taxes and sales taxes. If we shift more burden onto sales tax, that's just a regressive tax against that hurts the poor more and the middle class more than it helps anyone else. Do you seriously think that there's a chance that they could try to do away with property taxes? And what would that look like, and what would that mean if they did to local police departments, to school boards, on down the line?
Well, Jim, it will be horrible. And I think that we have to understand that government runs primarily from taxes. It is how we fund programs and services. And if we did away in Florida with the property tax, I think property tax is a large part of our county's budget. I think it could be 50 to 60% of school board budgets. It is a large part of our city government budgets. So it would make our local operations really, really ineffective and inefficient, because we won't have the money we need for law enforcement, for fire rescue, for our schools. And if we shift it to a sales tax, it's going to really, really be horrible for low and moderate income families, because if we get a break on property taxes, like I would like to not have to pay the $3,800 of property tax. But if it's shifted to a sales tax, then every time I buy clothes and different items, I'm paying that sales tax. Right now, our sales tax is 6%. If we shift it, let's say, to 10%, it's an ongoing burden. And those poor people and the people in moderate income families, a lot of times they're not homeowners. So they're not going to benefit from removing property insurance, but they're going to be burdened with paying the extra sales tax. And then if we switch it to income tax, there are many of us that work and many of us that don't, and we have the same situation. We have to understand these conversations about taxes. We just went through a process where the voters voted to have an additional $25,000 on their homestead exemption. Well, that money is going to be missed somewhere, that it's going to have to be made up for. So it normally results in the ground on increased water bills, increased fire rescue charges, public safety charges. So we have to just understand that when we talk about cutting taxes, it's what we agree to do. We vote and agree to tax ourselves to provide services in our community, and to try to help lift up our community. I think about the infrastructure in the cities right now, where many of them have made plans to try to, build out infrastructure, put in new infrastructure. And if that pot of money go away, it's not like they can just pull the money out for tree in a sense. It just makes no sense.
I didn't want to end today's discussion with you without talking about one of your colleagues who recently passed away, Senator Geraldine Thompson. She was she represented the Orlando area. A lot of folks in South Florida may not be familiar with Senator Thompson, who just died a few days ago. I know there was a memorial this week for her. Tell folks a little bit about Senator Thompson and the mark that she leaves behind.
As a young Black girl, you don't see people that look like you during the time I was growing up in bodies of government being representatives and senators. And she was kind of that role model, that trailblazer for many of us that let us know that, we could have one of those spots as well. She's going to be greatly missed. I mean, it was phenomenal with her memorial. We had 100% participation from the Senate caucus, and even, people that were not in Senator Thompson's political party spoke very highly about how they respected her. She was going to stand up for what she believed in. She was not going to back down, and she was going to show up for work every day. So she taught us to be present, to be faithful, and never to stop fighting for what you believe in. She's going to be really, really missed. She wanted a different office this year. And so she moved to another office, and I actually have her old office, and I'm going to keep her picture up. I'll make sure she's never forgotten. She was just an incredible public servant that fought for civil rights, for most of her life.
When we come back, we will meet the new head of the Democratic Party in Miami-Dade County. Stay with us. Welcome back. When President Donald Trump was reelected in November, no one was surprised he won Florida. But what did get people's attention was the fact that he turned Miami-Dade County red. Miami-Dade was once a Democratic stronghold, but Trump's victory changed that. He became the first Republican presidential candidate to win Miami-Dade County since George H.W. Bush won it in 1988. Trump's blowout win in Dade County ushered in a wave of Republican candidates into the newly created constitutional offices, like Sheriff and Property Appraiser. In the aftermath of that thumping, Laura Kelley was elected the new chair of the Miami-Dade Democratic Party. An immigration attorney, she ran for a state house seat in a heavily Republican district and got beat. I started the conversation by asking why she thinks Miami-Dade went red in 2024.
We have not been doing the groundwork that is required in order to keep this county blue. And that's why I wanted to run, because I knew that we weren't doing that, and we have to. And so and why weren't we doing that? I honestly, Jim, I could tell you that I did not know that the Miami-Dade Democratic Party existed until I ran for office. And that's outrageous. I'm a politically engaged person. So there was no outreach, even to Democrats about the existence of this organization. And I didn't know, I just, when I was filling out a form for my candidacy through the Florida Democratic Party, they asked me, are you a member of the local party? I said, well, I'm a registered Democrat in Miami-Dade County. So isn't that what that means? It's like, no, there's a whole organization here, but people don't know about it because we haven't been present. And it's exactly what you said, Jim. The direct voter contact has not been done. The direct voter registration has not been done. I can't explain why it hasn't been done because I wasn't a member of the organization until about April of last year. And of course, I've gathered information, but I don't have the personal knowledge. But what I know is this is exactly what needs to change.
So let's talk about that. What are your priorities moving forward? What is your plan to make the Dade Democratic Party relevant again?
Well, and I think that is the pointed question, is relevant again, because there is a level of irrelevance that we have been facing. And the first thing that we have to do is direct voter engagement. And that means we need to make sure that people are getting their vote by mail ballots, because as you know, all of the vote by mail ballots were deactivated as of December 31st, 2024. So we need to make sure people have their vote by mail ballots. We need to make sure that we are registering voters, and we have a plan to be working on our ground game, knocking on doors, making calls, sending texts when necessary, sending emails, and ensuring that we have this presence. That's one aspect of it. The other is we need to be present in the community in a way that we never have. And so in the last several weeks, we've been out registering voters. We've been wearing our shirts, unafraid and unashamed. And the response that we have received is overwhelming. People come up to us as volunteers and say, thank you for being here. Thank you for what you're doing. And so it just demonstrates the importance of having that presence in the community.
How can you convince anyone at the national level, given the state of how red the state of Florida has become, to invest in Dade County? How are you going to be able to raise money, I guess, is my question.
Yeah, and I think that is a tremendous challenge that we're facing. And I remind my fellow Democrats and our leadership in the party is that there's no help coming from the national party. Nobody's going to come save us and drop us the amount of money that we need to do the work that we need to do. So we really have to take a bottom-up approach. And that means demonstrating value. It means showing donors that we're actually doing the work as opposed to what had been done in previous years. And I think the proof has to be in the pudding. And so we can point to what we're actually doing, where we have pitch decks established, where we demonstrate where every dollar is going to be spent. And donors are going to be able to decide whether they want to focus on voter registration or they want to focus on some other important area that we will be tackling. But you're absolutely right. We have to have money to effectively run this organization. And the fact of the matter is, at this moment in time, it is a completely volunteer organization. We have no paid staff. This is one of the most important organizations in Miami-Dade County, and we're all volunteers, and most of us are new, but we're new and we're ready to work and excited about doing the work. We're building infrastructure within the party apparatus to make sure that we are getting the things done that we need to get done. And I know that we're going to be successful. I know that, and I believe that when donors see the energy that we're bringing and the work that we're doing, they're going to be convinced that this is a good investment.
I want to sort of shift gears a little bit and take advantage of your expertise. You are an immigration attorney. You represent clients who are going through deportation procedures. Give me your perspective on where the immigration debate is right now here.
Well, I would say first and foremost that our immigration system is broken. It's been broken for a long time. But what the Trump administration has done in just the last few weeks is create chaos and fear. And it is palpable across all of our communities. And it's extremely distressing to see people who have been here for well over 20 years in many cases have absolutely no avenues, and they're terrified. I actually had a conversation with a friend of mine who voted for Trump, who's Venezuelan, an immigrant, and he is very upset with what is happening right now. And it's because this is about separating families. And it's not just it's the rhetoric that is actually so deplorable, to use that word. The rhetoric, the idea that somebody who does not have legal status is a criminal, to say that is dehumanizing, and it's incorrect. It's factually incorrect. So whether or not somebody is a criminal is something that is decided by a judge or a jury. It's not something that Donald Trump gets to decide. And many of the people here actually entered legally, which that is not illegal. They have committed no crimes whatsoever. And to consider them criminals, it really paints the entire immigrant population as the other rather than an integral part of our community.
Do you get the sense that there is buyer's remorse beginning to set in, that for certain groups, citizens of Venezuelan descent, Cuban descent, Colombian, whatever, who may have family members who are here, who are now facing these situations, that there is an opening here to reach out to groups that the Democratic Party lost in recent years, to bring them back into the party?
Absolutely. And I don't know that I would call it buyer's remorse. It's being, I think, flabbergasted at what is happening, and a lack of being able to understand why he's doing this. And I think that when President Trump was campaigning and saying that he was going to do mass deportations, unfortunately, there are portions of the population that didn't believe that applied to them. I think he was quite clear, but I can also understand that when he said he was going to deport criminals and focused on the very few criminal elements that we have in our immigrant population, that people said, oh, he's only going to go after those people. But what ended up happening is that he just called, in a blanket fashion, everybody a criminal. And I think that is shocking. And so I think people are deeply disturbed by what's happening. And and I'm having those conversations with people, like the conversation I had with my friend the other day. And it is an inroad into saying, hey, look, there's been a lot of misinformation about the Democratic Party. And I want to say this, I don't blame voters for voting for Trump. This FOFA thing, FAFO, whatever it is, that's not
messed around and find out. This is the cleaner version.
Exactly.
Right.
And I think that is deeply problematic and lacking empathy and compassion. It's not the voters' fault for making this decision, and it's not the voters' fault for what Trump is doing right now. And I think that the Democratic Party has to take a good portion of the blame for the outcome of the elections as well. And I think one of the ways we can start to win over hearts and minds is by, actually effectively messaging something that we did not do in 2024 and we have struggled with previously. I mean, the reality of the situation is that not just the Miami-Dade Democratic Party, but the Democratic Party as a whole is a center-left party. And the vast majority of Democrats are moderates. We have more in common with Republicans than sometimes people within our own party when you're talking about the far left progressives. And unfortunately, the extremist element has taken over the Republican Party. And so what I want to say to moderates is that you have a home here in this party. It is a big tent party. What has unfortunately happened is that the Republican apparatus has been very effective at using the most far left extremist positions that anyone have ever said and saying, this is what the Democratic Party stands for, which is not the case. And we have to fight back against that and let people know what we really stand for, which is having a prosperous, secure future, and that we have the ability to continue to achieve the American dream in this country.
We'll be right back after this break. Well, that's all the time we have. If you have any thoughts or comments, feel free to contact me at jdefede@cbs.com. I do enjoy hearing from you. Thanks again for watching, and enjoy the rest of your day.